Hello and welcome to spring. And spring brings another episode of your favorite D&D show, Mastering Dungeons. I'm Shawn Merwin here with Duke, basketball fan. So far, so he's putting on the horns. He's putting on the he's got the Duke banner. You can tell it's NCAA basketball March Madness time because despite getting bounced early in the ACC tournament, Teos and his Blue Devils are still alive in
Yeah,
the big
we
dance.
somehow I've just knocked my mic like 9 times, but it was gorgeous, a gorgeous weekend. Yesterday was fantastic with an incredible game. Jared McCain, all-time Duke leader now for 3-pointers in a game with 8. He had 6. He had 22 points in the first half, 30 for the game. And I know this is the coverage that everybody wants. It's the Mike Shea Sports Hour, but Duke women were down 16 in the second quarter against Ohio State, playing at Ohio State, because that's how women's basketball is sometimes. NCAA tourney at your home court when you're the number 2 seed. Well, Duke, despite being the lower seed, came back from behind, ended up winning by 12. Shout out to the Lady Blue Devils. That was rocking. It was a delicious game to watch. Just a joyous weekend of basketball, the way that it should be every weekend.
Yeah, I generally watch the first few games of the tournament,
But you were
but
somewhere.
I was at GaryCon,
Mm.
yes. So I did not get the chance to see any of the games, but I did get a chance to play some games, and I
Ooh.
did get a chance to run some games where the lower seed generally won. Uh, no, it
I
was
see
it
what you
was
did
a
there.
very nice show. It was my first time there. Uh, very nice. Lots of people, lots of games, lots of friendly faces, lots of new faces. Uh, got to rub elbows with some people I hadn't met before, get to reacquaint myself with some I had. So very nice. Interesting town, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Neat tourist town. Lots of restaurants, lots of
Hmm.
bars. The facility was this huge, sprawling resort. So that was cool to see. I don't know is that I would go back unless I was working,
Hmm.
but that's how I attend a lot of shows, so I can't say it won't happen. But
Yeah.
definitely a nice show. The one thing about it was loud
Oh.
because while the resort is sprawling, there are only so many areas in which people congregate, and every single one of those areas was packed, and every single one of those areas was loud.
Huh.
I bought based on something that Thomas Valley, who ran the Adventurers League content there, said. I bought a portable amp, basically, where you put a headset on and it
Yeah.
shoots your voice out, and it saved me, Teos. It saved
Wow.
my life.
Because the rooms were
Uh,
that loud that you as
the rooms
DM.
were the AL room was so loud that if I had had to yell over, my voice would have been shot the first day. Uh, I'm talking normally here on a Monday after a con where I ran 4 games and played some games and had a lot of meetings to talk. Uh, it was the best. And I
Wow.
apologize to Ginny Loveday and any other DM where if I was pointing in your direction and it was too loud, Ginny was not afraid to tell me to turn the blanking thing down. So that's great. But if it was too loud at anybody else, overcoming anyone else's voice, I apologize. Next time, throw things at me.
That's the future is where you'll have a wireless mesh network just for your table where everybody can hear.
Yeah,
You'll do voice chat, but at the table.
yeah, and I could, people could hear me. I could only hear about 2 in every 6 of my players. So I did a lot of leaning over and
Yeah. Oh yeah,
holding
rooms
the
like
ear
that are
out.
rough. That
Yeah,
is tough. I
but
really
it was the
love
whole
quiet rooms.
yeah, it was the whole convention because when I was in the hotel or when I was in the restaurant, it was noisy. When I was at the bar, obviously, it's always noisy, but it was even more so. Uh, so it was rough in that sense. But again, I'm an old man now, so kids these days with their loudness. Uh,
In my
but
day,
what
we
was
could hear each other talk at the
exactly?
table.
And another thing that was interesting was I ran AL again. I haven't sat down and like run AL for 4 slots. It's been years. It's been
Mhm.
literal years. And I was worried. I was worried that I had lost the step. I was worried I wouldn't. It was great. It was so
Yeah.
much fun. The three tables where I ran a normal Dream of the Red Wizards adventure, so much fun. Uh, I the adventure I ran was a really interesting premise with a lot of cool things, but it was fundamentally flawed to the point where I had to like cut full encounters out and
Mm,
move things around and do things differently. And I did so on the fly, and it was great. It was
wow.
fun to be able to in real time say,
Yeah,
wait, okay, no, I need to move this here, move this there. It was so much fun.
that's great.
Uh, and of course, we had a lot of news drop there,
Yep.
and we will be covering that news shortly. But I wanted to get to one thing in the listener corner. Various people have via YouTube or via whatever means said similar things, such as what boils down to is how dare you criticize Shadowdark? Uh, and I want to, I mean, some people were just like, obviously they don't listen to the show and they heard that we were talking about it. So they came and were upset that
Yeah.
we weren't as complimentary to Shadowdark as they would have been. And so, how dare we criticize Shadowdark? We dare because we're not criticizing it. We're not criticizing the game. We're not criticizing its creators. What we did was discuss the words on the page and looked at how those words came together to express ideas and to make rules to play a game. Uh, I don't think we were overly critical. If you want to hear a critical review of something, go look at our reviews of the Wizards products that have come out recently. That is right. Some people will say, "Why are you punching down? Why are you punching? Why aren't you punching up?" We're not punching down. Right? Shadow Dark is way up here. Shadow Dark is above Teos and me. Shadow Dark is good, and it's popular, and it's fun, and we are not punching down at it. And when we punch up, we are punching up at Wizards of the Coast products. The same way we look at Shadow Dark, right? We're holding those two things in equal esteem by just looking at the words, not who
Yeah.
made them, not anything else, but just that.
And the punching is is a critique that comes from a critique rather than a criticism, an analysis, right? That comes
Right.
from our respect for what comes into making products like this, right?
Sure.
We, whether it's an adventure that Wizards of the Coast wrote, that we find parts of it to be problematic, right? We always come in rooting, right? We always come in excited, hoping that it'll
Right.
be the coolest thing we've ever seen and that we will learn from it, right? And we truly
Mhm.
always learn from it. So that part's always great. And sometimes it's not the best thing we've ever seen, and sometimes it's far from it or it's close to it. It really varies. But a
Mhm.
lot of times, even like if you look at our reviews of old classic adventures, right? We reviewed the first Dragonlance adventure.
Mhm.
Absolutely, I wanted to open it up and find that, wow, this was a hidden gem that was perfect in every way. It isn't, you know,
Mhm.
and so
Right.
what we're doing in our analysis is trying to provide a framework and an understanding that others can use to analyze their works and to build their own works, whether you're homebrewing or you are um,
Mhm.
working for somebody as a freelancer, or you are using some product and you want to know and think about how to use it, then the hope is that that's helpful, right? With Shadowdark, somebody out there is going to make the next Shadowdark, we hope. And
Mhm.
so it's good to learn from it, right? What is absolutely amazing about it? What could use a few tweaks? What kind of falls a little flat? And of course, that's for us.
Right.
It's always different at everybody's table, and there's a real big difference between the type of analysis we're doing, which is kind of a clinical, designer kind of view, and the is this game amazing to play? I mean, AD&D was amazing to play for me for years. If I were to
Mhm.
analyze it, and I have, it has some
Mhm.
issues. So the,
Right.
the two things are not incompatible. You can have an incredible, incredible experience with products that have many flaws and are still great products.
Right. And I played Shadow Dark at GaryCon. I thought it was a 4 hour event, and I got there, and it turned out it was only a 2 hour
Mm,
event. And it was run by someone who I played D&D with, have seen and run D&D, an amazing game master. Weird Dave Colson.
mm-hmm.
Anybody who's been in AL for a while might, or if you've been to conventions, you know Weird Dave. He calls himself Weird Dave, so I'm not like disparaging him. And he had this terrain set up with this castle, and it was really like super nicely done. And he runs an incredible game no matter what game he runs. Great role player, knows the rules. Uh, so I sat down ready for this Shadowdark experience, and it was 2 hours of D&D Light. Uh, we really
Mhm.
didn't get into the rules that make Shadowdark different from a D&D variant.
Hmm.
Um, it wasn't
Interesting.
like we got hit and we dropped the torch.
Uh,
It was changed so that right you could use the luck tokens for different things,
huh.
and and so and Dave basically said, I'm not running Shadowdark by the rules. I'm running a convention experience using Shadowdark as the base.
Sure.
So I got to play in a really fun game with fun players, a great DM, a GM in this case, and it wasn't Shadowdark. Right, there
Well,
wasn't the
and
Shadowdark
maybe
we read.
I think one of the reasons people, it's funny. We've reviewed a number of different games, and Shadowdark probably got the most, uh, feedback. Let's say of people saying to us, "Why did you not like this game?" When we do like the game,
Right.
and I think it's because I think the number of people is because, of course, it's popular and it means something to them, but also because Shadowdark is open enough that so many DMs can make it what they want it to be, as happened at your
Yeah.
table, right? And
Yep.
that means that the game is exactly what you want it to be because you
Yeah.
are doing things to it beyond
Yeah.
what's in the written page, right? And our
Right.
analysis goes back to the written page. Sure, brings
Yep.
in some of our play experiences for feedback, but it's really based on that. And but that's really
Yeah.
interesting to hear that this you came ready for a full Shadow Dark experience,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Uh, and I talked to other folks who played not just in that game, but in different games. And I said, "How was your experience?" And they said the exact same thing I did.
huh,
They said, "I was expecting, the torches to be this important and these random elements and this and that and the other thing. And it just turned into a D&D light.
mm,
And so I can see why this game is so popular if, as you say, it's a light version of D&D that people can put their experiences over and tweak to
yeah,
make it, especially with the OSR crowd that GaryCon draws.
mm,
There were probably more sessions of Shadow Dark offered there than any other game other than variants of D&D.
wow,
So that shows you how well this game has captured the
yeah,
imagination of that audience, which is what we've been saying, right, as we
yeah,
review it. And that's one of the brilliant things
mm,
about it. Uh, so I just wanted to, and
yeah,
I also want to add that I had several people come up to me and said, we listened or I listened to your review of Shadow Dark and I bought it based on your recommendation.
right,
So that made me feel better because I'm always going to feel guilty that, oh, were we too harsh, right? That sort of thing. And hearing that people said I didn't know about it, I wasn't interested in it, but then when you talked about it, it made me want to go out and buy it.
hmm,
So that sort of assuaged my fear that we were in fact unfair or too harsh.
yeah.
So
I've heard folks say that too, and that's
yeah,
always our goal too is knowing
yeah,
no matter how great a game is, it's not for everybody, right? No matter how good
mhm,
an adventure I write, some people will go, that it was not the experience I wanted. That's
mhm,
the way it goes, right? And so by talking about it, hopefully those folks who are interested in that kind of experience will check it out, and will do
mhm,
so, with some good knowledge that they can take into the experience. And those who
mhm,
really know that this is not what they want will go, okay, yeah, that certainly sounds like what I don't want.
right,
Like I was reading someone's write up of how they played Eclipse Phase, which is a
mhm,
very meaty game, and how much they absolutely
yeah,
love that. And I thought to myself, well, that's probably a person that may not want to try a game like Shadowdark. I mean, maybe they would,
right,
but they're enjoying the
yeah,
incredibly long skill list and all of that. These are all features that are pleasing to them, right? And so it's just
yeah,
different games for different folks, right?
right. So with that, let's jump quickly into our news and commentary section, starting with a bit of sad news that happened just before GaryCon. Jim Ward, has passed away. Jim is a legendary game designer. He was at 72 this last week. Uh, He was one of the first players at Gary Gygax's game. He played the wizard Drawmage, which is Jim Ward backwards. There's a great story where he ran into Gary Gygax at a bookstore, and they liked the same book, and we're looking at the same books, and they started talking about games, and he ended up being invited to Gary's Castle Greyhawk game.
Mhm.
Jim worked at TSR, worked on many fine books there, and the first sci-fi RPG, Metamorphosis Alpha, and later he worked on the first post-apocalyptic game, Gamma World. He co-wrote Supplement 4 for OD&D. He worked on AD&D's Deities and Demigods, the hardback book Greyhawk Adventures, and so much more. Deities and Demigods was like the book that I used most. It just drew me in with all of that. And so, yeah, 10% of
Yeah.
my love of D&D started with that book.
Yeah, we could do a show just on that, right? How that has changed. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I absolutely loved that book when I was young. I think everything that I loved about mythology came alive through that book. It exposed me to new mythologies that I hadn't
Mhm.
worked with, and yeah, and it just made you want to create different types of characters, and it was a fantastic book.
Yeah, yeah. I basically passed a Greek and Roman mythology class that I had to take my freshman year because I probably could have taken the final exam and passed just based on what was in the Deities and Demigods book. In the 80s, Jim and Rose Estes started an education department at TSR, planning to market classroom modules to teachers because Jim had been a teacher before going to TSR. He worked for 4 years at TSR, got laid off and freelance, got rehired, went through that whole cycle. Everything old is new again, Teos, right? People getting laid off and
Sure is.
freelance and coming back. Uh, you became the director of design and development, and then the vice president of design. What else do you know or remember
Yeah,
about
I mean, I
Jim?
read a great write up by Shannon Appelkline, who's just, I mean, the obituary master. I mean, he has such an understanding of everything that people have done and can draw from so many sources. He wrote that when he looks at Jim Ward was making, he says, many of the most crucial decisions for the advancement of D&D during that second edition era. And he says, quote, if Gary Gygax was the architect for D&D during its earliest days at TSR, Jim Ward was that architect for the end of the TSR era. By then, he was also one of the people with the most extensive histories at the company and thus the most institutional knowledge. It was here that he had perhaps his greatest impact on Dungeons and Dragons and on the role playing field as a whole. And his character is revealed when in 1996 TSR tells him, hey, this is all going downhill, you've got to lay off most of your staff. And he says, nope, I'm not doing that, I quit.
Mhm.
Rather than lay off his staff, he just says, I'm not refusing those great people, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
And he worked with a bunch of other companies after that, Troll Lord Games, recently with Goodman Games. The Metamorphosis Alpha remake just came out not too long ago, so he really worked right up to the end. And we've linked to that Shannon Appelkline article in our show notes at designers-and-dragons.com. Really nice write up.
Mhm.
Thanks, Jim, for all that you did.
Thank you so much. D&D has announced that they are going to reinstate early access for local game stores. So these local game stores in the US and Canada will be able to release original and alt cover versions of major D&D releases up to 2 weeks prior to the global release date. Um, this program is similar to the one that they had earlier in the fifth edition era, but it's no longer dependent on the overall Wizards Play Network status of those stores. So for Vecna Eve of Ruin, stores will be able to sell it on May 7th ahead of the May 21 general release. This is for in-store sales only, not online or shipped orders. So we've got Vecna Eve of Ruin, Quests from the Infinite Staircase, the Player's Handbook for 2024, the DMG for 2024, and the Monster Manual of 2025 all being released early if you purchase it in store at your friendly local game store.
It's really great to see that. I was surprised by it because before they'd said, oh, this was hard to maintain. We're canceling this when they kind of stopped this program. And it was also, I think, a little contentious in that you had to be a certain type of store through your WPN status to qualify for it. So I really like seeing this back. I think stores need that help, especially because Wizards is now offering freebies when you pre order on their sites, right? So
Right.
it's interesting. I wonder if Wizards is somewhat trying to say, look, wouldn't it be great if we could get more sales from direct sales, of course, but then have the other sales not be Amazon sales, but be or online, large discounters, and instead be gaming stores for the rest of it, which would be a better split than Amazon. But
Yeah.
it's always complicated, but either way, this is something that I think is a breath of fresh air for the gaming stores out there.
Yeah. In further support of gaming stores, Wizards announced earlier the Descent into the Lost Caverns of Tsojcanth uh, will be launching March 29th and runnable through April 29th, where stores can play this event in a tournament mode by tracking the time and the scoring, or just play it as standard play. And stores will receive this adventure on March 26th, so tomorrow, and then distribute it to their DMs. And then finally on March
Before you
or
get into that,
May.
I just want to
Oh,
ask
go
Shawn,
ahead.
did you get to play or hear about Descent into Lost Caverns? Because that
I
was running
did
there, right?
not get a chance to play it, but it ran during GaryCon.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really hear much of. I only heard like gossipy things, not about the event itself, but oh, I had this player or I had that player. Oh,
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
see this? I didn't hear anything specifically about the adventure, except someone who I trust very much to judge these things, who was a DM for it, said it was the perfect epic event, the way
Cool.
it was written.
That's great. Yeah,
So
and I don't know if it's the
yeah.
same person or not, but Dave Rosser had a kind of positive thing on
Mhm.
Twitter, which I appreciated hearing. So yeah, cool. I
Yeah.
look forward
It
to
was not
seeing.
Dave, although I saw Dave while I was there.
Cool.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. And then on May 17th to 19th, there's a crossover Magic the Gathering event that will be celebrating the 50 years of D&D, Baldur's Gate 3, and Magic. There will be a draft event for Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. This event will support 4 special dungeon cards for the event, which can be downloaded from the link in our show notes.
That
So,
surprised me a bit, but it's cool and it makes sense.
yeah,
Hey, remember there are these cards that, yeah.
right.
So let's have a special Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate event,
Yeah.
May 17th. That's great. Yeah.
And we've seen this relationship between Wizards and game stores, right? During D&D encounters, there it was super well supported, and the game stores felt close to Wizards and taking, or at least most, the ones that I dealt with, and there were many,
Mhm.
all loved it and wanted more, and were willing to like report back results. And then, then they go away, and you can almost see it. It's like everything else with companies and with Wizards in this case, where it's like game stores are super important. We need to support them as well, best we can. Game stores are not important at all, and we need to focus on these other things. And then it swings, the pendulum swings back to game stores are very important, and we need to support them and help them. And since it's not necessarily a measurable thing,
Right.
it's easy for the higher ups who rely on analytics to say, are game stores really that important? And then you get different answers depending on who is in certain positions at different times.
I love studying the sort of varying level of support between home play, which is almost never a big push,
Mhm.
convention play, and store play, and it's just wild. You can just graph those three things over the years, and it's just wild to see how it works. I mean, there are times when Wizards would attend Gen Con and spend unimaginable budgets there, and then the next year they're like, "We're not going to be at Gen Con.
Mhm.
If we're going to be at Origins, we're not going to be at Origins." and just
Right.
vanishes from convention play for a while, just letting Baldman Games handle. And now it's like, oh, we're going to send lots of people to conventions. We're going to have a huge presence at Gen Con, right? Just goes and
Right.
comes and ebbs and flows.
Right. And then that affects these other things, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't spend $500,000 at Gen Con, so let's use that money to get into stores, or let's use that money to
Mhm.
reach out directly to the gamers, right? Via direct sales or direct marketing. And it is really fascinating to watch and see how things work for a while and then don't.
Yeah.
Uh, because it worked before, so why isn't it working now? Because everything changes and you uh you know you
Yeah.
can study the past and then you may have to repeat it if you don't, but you will probably have to repeat it even if you do study it. So
Well,
that's just the way of life.
speaking of the
uh
past,
yes, Tales from the Infinite Staircase, the adventures that are within this product have been revealed. Roll20 revealed this on their pre-order page, so we will be getting Beyond the Crystal Cave, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, Pharaoh, The Lost Caverns of Tsojcanth, The Lost City, and When a Star Falls. You can run them individually, or you can put them together in a series, which takes player characters from levels 1 to 13. And this is the quote from that Roll20 reveal. The infinite staircase spirals in a dreamlike expanse with doors leading to fantastic realms. It's home to the noble genie Naphis, who hears wishes made throughout the multiverse and recruits heroes to fulfill them. These pleas summon adventurers to the lost caverns, suffused with magical energy, fairy tale gardens in the Feywild, futuristic spaceships, and other wondrous locales. And I think that's pretty cool.
yeah, it is. I am excited to see Pharaoh reach a new
Mhm.
generation of players, as well as these other adventures. Though, it is always with that curiosity of, wow, I'd hoped that Pharaoh and the larger three adventure arc would have become sort of like Tomb of Annihilation, right? There would be a
Mhm.
remake inspired by that that would make for a really neat kind of sands desert adventure. Um, Similarly, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks could be the impetus for, a whole hardback adventure that would take that experience and refine it, because there are
Mhm.
some real flaws to a lot of these, and I'm very curious what they'll do. I
Mhm.
mean, Pharaoh could really use some sensitivity consulting, as we talked about when we reviewed it. Barrier
Yep.
Peaks has all these empty, endless rooms of nothing that don't create great experiences, and the keycard system's a little weird. Will they update those, right? And that'll be just very interesting to see. Beyond the Crystal Cave has some very interesting experiences. In fact, it was kind of remade for D&D Encounters season, and that
Mhm.
met with mixed results, because its experience is very different than your typical D&D adventure. And so
Mhm.
will they tweak that, or will they just kind of, file a few bits off here and there? I'm very curious to see how this goes.
Yep, we will probably take a look at that when it comes out. Definitely, we'll look at it for Pharaoh, as you and I are big fans of Pharaoh. So
Love it.
we'll see how that goes. Uh, and speaking of building new things, we now know more about the Lego D&D collaboration. Lego has revealed its set. We are getting the Red Dragon's Tail. That was the winner of that competition where you could submit your D&D themed set. The winner was Lucas Bolt from Amsterdam. His design has been adapted into a 3,745 piece set that includes a tavern, a castle, and then the Red Dragon. We're going to get a Beholder, an Owlbear, a Displacer Beast, a Gelatinous Cube, an Orc Rogue, a Gnome Fighter, an Elf Wizard, and a Dwarf Cleric. The set will cost you $360. It becomes available on April 4th or April 1st in Lego stores and on their website. And if you purchase this between April 1st and 7th, you will receive an exclusive Mimic dice box. You want to
Yeah,
tell
and
us
they
what else we
also
get from Lego?
yeah, they announced a set of 12 minifigs that will release in September. It's hard to get that information, but we've seen some pictures. There's a Mind Flare with a very cute Intellect Devourer companion. Strahd is there, the Lady of Kane. It looks really neat. Tasha and several others. That looks exciting. And to promote all of this, there will be a free 5th level adventure inspired by the Red Dragon's Tale set. You start in the tavern, you uncover a sorcerer's scheme, maybe you'll face a red dragon. You can apparently optionally kind of build the set and play as you build the set, or maybe use parts of it. It's unclear exactly what the D&D Beyond article was hinting at there, but there's this sort of option to do that. You can run it with or without the D&D rules, which is very clever. So you don't, somebody who bought this set because it looks cool could play a game of D&D without actually turning to the rules, which is very cool. There are 4 character sheets based on minifigs, and it'll be available, interestingly, only in PDF form on April 1st on D&D Beyond, which is strange because often D&D Beyond has refused to give us PDFs when we've asked for them for various digital offerings. So for whatever reason, through whatever agreement with Lego, this is only in PDF, apparently.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
Lastly, there's an actual play
yeah.
filmed at the Lego house with DM Anjali Bhimani, Ginny D, and Luis Carrazzo, the fan designer Lucas Bolt, and Lego designer Jordan Scott. And this releases April 6th on lego.com, pre-filmed. It'll also be on the YouTube and Twitch channels, so you can watch that game as they play through the free adventure.
Yep. One thing that's not in our show notes that I just have to add because it happened while I was sitting at a table playing is that Tome of Beasts 1 from Kobold Press has been added to or is about to be added to D&D Beyond. This is yet another partner being brought in to D&D Beyond to give offerings of non-Wizards of the Coast content to D&D Beyond users. Some people speculated that maybe Wizards of the Coast would not reach out to Kobold Press because Kobold Press went and made their own version of D&D, Tales from the Valiant, the Black Flag project, if you will. And apparently this didn't bother Wizards of the Coast much because they brought brought in Kobold Press, and Kobold Press had to agree to this. So hope any bad blood that was there
Yeah.
seems to be patched up, at least for the moment.
I'm glad to see that, right? That would be an easy thing for somebody on either side to say, we're not talking to you. Because there's that both, D&D could see it as, wow, you guys, we were partners and you went off and did something that boy, really heavily uses D&D, and we could quibble about that, but won't for legal reasons. But, we're not super in love with that. And on the Kobold Press side, you could see them saying, well, you guys had that whole OGL debacle and we're trying to get out from under you, and this is sort of competitive. But yet they were able both to set that aside and work for what is surely in both of their interests. And I'm sure we'll create good sales for both. So that's great. There's a lot of question online about, does this signify something in particular around Kobold Press not really being behind Tales of the Valiant, or D&D feeling a particular way? And I don't think it has any greater meaning, right? I think it means they were able to set aside those differences, and that this is a good revenue stream for everybody, right? This is a popular monster book, a great thing to add to D&D Beyond, and everybody will make good money, right? It's not like Kobold Press announced Tales to the Valiant and sunset all of its 5e things. No, it very gladly sells all of those, and this is a great way to sell this too.
Yeah, and really what it says in the long run, as Teos said, is everyone who's in the industry, obviously they want to make money, but they want what's best for the players. They want this hobby to succeed. Wizards of the Coast wants this hobby to succeed. Kobold Press wants this hobby to succeed. And, so doing so means sometimes sharing, sometimes partnering, sometimes uh, doing things that you think are right, and then you realize, no, maybe that's not the best way to go about this. And that's what this says. Um, so, anyone who ran off and supported Kobold Press because they were sticking it to the man, they weren't, right?
Right.
They
Right.
were doing what they thought was best at the time, and now they're doing what they think is best at this time.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what companies have to do. They're all
yeah,
companies that have to feed mouths, right?
right. So, so it shows the outrage machine. If you are a proponent of the outrage machine, you are definitely going to be disappointed over time with every single company, because the company that you think and you're standing behind with your pitchfork and torch and saying, we hate wizards, so we're behind this company. Strap in, baby, because you are going to start seeing some partnerships, I'm sure,
Yeah.
where you're like, wow, really?
Yeah.
They're going to partner with wizards? Okay. Uh, so get ready to be outraged at every single company ever in the
Right. I
history
mean,
of the world.
an example of that happened this weekend when, or maybe it was late last week when it came out that Matt Mercer and Deborah Ann Wall have read through and provided opinions on the next Dungeon Master's Guide, right?
Mhm.
And that's largely a marketing move, right? To show, hey, these folks are behind it. But you know, was Critical Role going to say no? Sorry, we are making a new role playing game. We're in competition with you. No, anybody who's an adult recognizes this is an ecosystem, and you are in the ecosystem, and you're better off when you appreciate each other and are genuine around that, right? And you don't pretend like there are hard lines because there aren't. That's the way it works in this industry. I mean, folks and fans like to pretend this, but it was always interesting during the edition wars of fourth edition and Pathfinder how there would be these comments by fans of, say, Pathfinder when the staff were moving back and forth and playing games together right on both sides.
Mhm.
It wasn't the hard divide that folks like to pretend it was, and it's better
Yeah.
when the companies also reflect that and all the individuals involved reflect that.
Yep. And a couple things to add from our creator and crowdfunding corner. Surviving Strange Hollow Kickstarter still going. I've got my Strange Hollow
Sweet.
hat on here. I met with some of the staff, some of the writers, layout person for the book, and we had a great time at GaryCon hanging out and chatting. You can go to get.accidentalcyclops.com. The campaign ends on the 4th of April at 11 a.m. Eastern. Thank you, thank you, thank you to those of you who have helped so far. And if you're on the fence, please know we are going to work as hard as we possibly can to make an experience in this book that you will remember as a 5e player or game master for a long time.
Awesome.
And Teos, you got a chance to play Daggerheart.
I did. I joined the awesome folks at D20 Play. So Tom Christie was DM. DM David was there as a player. Several other fine folk. You can find there's a link in our show notes, or check out the D20 Play channel on YouTube. You can find the game where we ran through the playtest adventure. It's included in the playtest packet, and overall, it was a lot of fun. Having read Candela Obscura, I was curious whether this would be a game that I was like, it's so. But actually, this is a lot of fun for me. What I found interesting is that it's surprisingly tactical, and it's even more surprising because it says this is a very narrative game. It actually says that, and then you start reading the rules, you go, "Ooh, for a narrative game, I'm tracking a lot." Um,
Yeah.
Big potential for swinginess. In one encounter, almost all of our attacks either missed or generated fear, which meant our GM got to go because there's sort of a no initiative, but the GM gets a turn when kind of mechanic.
Right.
And so it meant that the GM was going all the time, which really broke up our play and was sort of surprising to all of us. But the characters are really fun. The concepts are a lot of fun. I liked my frog or ribbit rogue that I played. Um, it's the kind of game that I can really enjoy. It felt kind of fourth edition ish in that kind of level of like tactics and which of your features will use and how do they come together. But what I found surprising is that I had expected this to be the Critical Role RPG.
Mhm.
And if that is the intent, I think that Critical Role should kind of dial back that tactical nature. If
Mhm.
this is a Critical Role RPG, just one of many, sort of the way companies publish board games, then cool. Let's have a fun tactical game that some people will enjoy. But if you want a
Mhm.
lot of people to enjoy a game, this is too tactical for most players, right? It's the kind of thing where in my turn I was making 6 decisions and there were 4 things to track.
Mm,
4 little units of currency, some for the DM, some for me. And that's a
yeah.
lot. That's a lot of headspace. Not a lot of
Mm,
people like that. I like that, but a lot of people
right.
don't.
Yeah.
So it was fun, a great time. But yeah, I'd be curious to see what they do and whether they dial that all down and how.
Awesome. Well, that was our news.